Good morning, folks. The intent of this video is not to pick a fight or to throw shade on a journalist, but it is to point out that it's necessary when incorrect information is published that it needs to be refuted, particularly in relation to U.S.-South Africa diplomatic relations or Donald Trump's refugee program. And this is the case of an article appeared in Briefly recently, just a couple days ago, the 5th of December, if I recall correctly, talking about the refugee program, and it goes to a source which is a Twitter account in the States. I'm going to discuss this now and tell you the hazards because this gets a lot of people in South Africa who see something in print or online and think that it must be real. That doesn't mean it's real just because it's online. You should check your sources. And in this case, it takes very little effort for me to check sources, and it's a bit disconcerting what information is in here. So let me cover that. The article is titled, United States to Accept Only Afrikaner Refugees as Current Amerikaners Reportedly Face Challenges. Okay, where does Amerikaners come into there? Anyway, the title implies that because someone is facing difficulties, presumably Amerikaners, I don't even know if they know that that's a vendor that works for the U.S. government to get people over here. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But presumably because they're facing difficulties, the program will be limited to Afrikaners. Well, that's nonsense. That's poppycock. Regardless of what the Amerikaners are doing, it has nothing to do with the number of people who will be approved to come over here and who will come over. It may slow it down if they don't have enough service providers, but it won't limit it to Afrikaners. That's just poppycock. Donald Trump is prioritizing Afrikaner refugees for acceptance into the United States in the next fiscal year. That's a true statement. That is a true statement. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Levitt confirmed that only white Afrikaner South Africans would be accepted. That's true. She said that, but it's misleading, and I'll explain why a little bit later on. Now, this is interesting. One online user claimed that the current group of Afrikaners in America were facing challenges in securing work. Now, folks, that's flat out nonsense. This is what the story says. According to one formerly Twitter user, it hasn't been easy going for the 52 white South Africans who left the country for the United States of America. The Afrikaners left the country after United States President Donald Trump signed an executive order granting them refugee status. Okay, there's a few problems with this. First off, there weren't 52 white South Africans who were Afrikaners. There were 59 South Africans who came over, including a colored family, and some were Afrikaners, a few were coloreds, and some were English-speaking South Africans. There were no Indians in the first batch, to my knowledge, although I understand the husband might have been, but not clear. So 52. Where did they draw this number from? At the time that this article was published on the 5th of December 2025, the number of South Africans who had already arrived in the USA under this program was in excess of 460. 342 arrived in fiscal year 2025, which ended on 30 September 2025, and 122 have arrived through November 30th. In fiscal year 2026. So 52, presumably the number 52 is somehow associated with the 59ers who arrived back on May 12th. That's the only thing I can guess. That's the only anything that comes close to making sense. He said that Trump granted refugee status to all Afrikaners who felt that they were being persecuted in South Africa as a result of the government's laws. Well, that's misleading and incorrect. Trump did not grant refugee status. He offered it to all Afrikaners and racial minorities who can articulate past racial persecution or genuine fear of future persecution. That is very different than what the author incorrectly claims. But this is where things take a turn for the absurd when the author actually posts an X tweet from "It's a psyop, bro." Really? That handle? With unsubstantiated claims and never questions the placement or access of the account holder in offering this bogus information. I mean, when you find something on social media, you should question the source. How does the person know this information? Do they have placement to be able to find the information? Do they actually have access to it? The tweet reads, remember the 52 white South African refugees we fast-tracked because they were a huge resource for American agriculture? 37 are unemployed in urban areas, collecting welfare, SNAP, and housing. 6 work at Amazon warehouses, 5 in entry-level assembly plants, and 3 at call centers. Now, again, what is meant by the 52? Does he mean the 59ers? A huge resource for American agriculture? Who claimed that? Most of the 59ers weren't even farmers. The program is not geared to farmers, so that's a wholly uninformed position. And 37 are unemployed? Well, that seems implausible given that about half of the 59ers who arrived May 12th were actually minor children and not part of the workforce. At best, maybe 30 of them were adults who were working age, but even few of those were retired. And collecting welfare, SNAP, and housing? Well, of course some of them are. These are legal entitlements under the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1980. The same that any other refugees receive. However, the big beautiful bill has reduced and eliminated many of these entitlements, effective very soon. Now, the ex-poster seems incapable of distinguishing between a refugee and a legal immigrant. An immigrant who's arrived here and is living off of public assistance after arrival is a problem. A refugee doing so is an expectation of the system. They generally arrive penniless and with nothing because they fled a conflict. In-country refugee status, which is what's going on in South Africa and previously happened in Bosnia, also in Cuba, is very different. But at least in the short term, they're expected to be on assistance. We give these NGOs almost $3 billion a year to facilitate this. It's a matter of public record. I don't know who this poster is or if they're just a poser. And now the next point. 6 of them are working in Amazon warehouses. I don't know if that's true, but so? Is there a point to the comment? An Amazon warehouse worker here in central Pennsylvania earns $17 an hour with no skills and entry level. You walk into the warehouse and get hired and you get paid $17 an hour with no skills. You don't even have to be a forklift operator. You'll learn that on the job. $17 an hour. When I worked minimum wage, it was $3.35 an hour. Now, Amazon in central Pennsylvania also offers comprehensive benefits in addition to $17. Things you don't have to pay for like medical, dental, vision care. I don't get dental or vision care as a retired combat veteran after 36 years of military service. No dental, no vision care. Amazon, $17 an hour. And he wants to belittle that employment. They get a 401k retirement plan with matching benefits. They get paid time off, life and disability insurance, plus unique perks like career choice for education and Prime membership for Amazon. They get mental health support, 24/7 counseling. I don't get that. Financial counseling and family support, adoption, parental leave. Working $17 an hour. What is so wrong with working Amazon? The person means to belittle that as if it's a bad thing. Now, many of the refugees who have arrived in America from South Africa can't even find employment where they came from, owing to racist laws and employment policies in South Africa. Heck, $7 an hour, let alone $17 an hour, would be an improvement over their earning potential in South Africa. And working for a living is a dignified activity, contrary to the condescending commentary posted on Twitter and swallowed hook, line, and sinker by the author. Then the author turns to artificial intelligence to confirm the Twitter post. Seriously? Didn't reach out to somebody who actually knows what they're talking about? You went to Grok? According to AI chatbot Grok, no evidence could be found confirming the exact employment or welfare details for the group. Of course not. It's not publicly available. Which begs the question, why do you believe this ex-poster who has no status knows anything about this at all? The USA to only accept Afrikaners going forward while the status of the refugees is uncertain at present. Any other Afrikaners looking to relocate will be able to do so. Trump has prioritized 7,500 spots for South Africans in the resettlement program for the next fiscal year, claims the author. But the figure is 7,500 for the entire globe, of which Trump has said 7,000 were reserved for South Africans, not for Afrikaners. The author claims that this was stated by White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt, who confirmed that only white Afrikaner South Africans would be accepted as refugees in the country. And the author quotes her directly. Refugee admissions into the country right now are essentially at zero, with the exception of Afrikaners fleeing persecution in South Africa. Now, on this point, I cannot fault the author quoting Leavitt, but she is mistaken. She seems to conflate Afrikaner with South Africans. As we know for a fact that coloreds, Indians, and English-speaking South Africans have come over, and others have been approved to come over. So it's not just white South Africans, not just Afrikaners. And the fact that the author doesn't make this distinction, or at least raise the question, is disturbing, along with getting things factually incorrect. But the most disturbing part about this seems to be a story that's generated as a consequence of a Twitter post that's just bogus. There's no merit to it whatsoever. 52, there were no 52, there were 59. There were white Afrikaners? No. Half of them were English speakers, and there were coloreds in the mix. Just factually incorrect. Disturbing that people would turn to that sort of thing. And the nonsense about 37 are working, only about half of them were even working age. So that would be 30 or less. And denigrating people working at Amazon where they get free dental and free frickin' vision care, things I don't get as a combat veteran, served my nation for 36 years. I have no insurance covering that. That comes out of my frickin' pocket. But people working in a warehouse here in central Pennsylvania, shoveling boxes and running computers for Amazon, make that. They get those benefits. You add all those benefits together, and that $17 per hour becomes a lot more. Because to pay for that health insurance, to pay for that time off, to pay for all those benefits, dental and things that they get for free, we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars of their income just to have the insurance pay for those things. Never mind the parental leave and all those other things that are paid for. To denigrate people working at Amazon is just asinine. Those people do quite well. $35,000 a year with no skills starting out, that's pretty darn good. Cheers.